Hey guys, TheKamsh here. Recently there's been a lot of posts on various websites and the competitive Hearthstone subreddit about what it takes to get to Legend. There's a Templestorm article, how many games does it take to get to Legend, things of that nature, and just discussing a lot of the nature of getting to Legend as more people start playing the game and start wanting to hit sort of the highest point that they can. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about my system for getting to Legend. I haven't played a ton this season, so I actually only just hit Legend pretty recently, but that was my 8th consecutive time hitting Legend on the NA server, and I don't think I'm necessarily smarter or more talented or luckier than the average Hearthstone player. I just think I have a pretty good system for laddering and things of that nature, so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit today about that, and sort of maybe you could consider my viewpoint as well as others while trying to ladder. So basically, the way I look at it is playing ladder. Once you get a good net deck that's decent in the meta, and once you're a good enough player to make the best percentage play a decent amount of the time, basically it's like rolling a dice. Let's say you have like a 10-sided die, and when you roll a 1 through a 6, you win. When you roll through a 7 through a 10, you lose. So let's say you play 10 games and you have a net positive of 2 wins, and you just keep doing that over and over and over again. So ladder at that point is very it's very robotic. Sure, you're gonna make decisions, and once in a while you'll have a cool play and everything like that, but a lot of it is draw driven and matchup driven. Sometimes your opponent will make mistakes and you can take advantage of that, but basically you're going to win slightly more than you lose, and you just have to grind out a decent amount of games without tilting, without switching to a crazy deck, things of that nature. So the way basically I go about this is when I'm laddering to Legend, I usually like to do something else so I don't think too deeply about Hearthstone. We'll go into that a little bit later. But I like to, do schoolwork if you're still in high school or university, watch a movie, do work, exercise, something like that. Watch streams if you want to improve while playing the game. Basically, you want to distract yourself from the actual game because you need to be really, really emotionally detached from the games you play. Because again, if you are playing a good deck in the meta, and you're playing it decently well, eventually, even if you have a losing streak or something like that, your wins will even out and you'll have more wins than losses and you'll be able to get there. Because if you get really emotionally attached and you have a string of losses, you'll start to go on tilt, and then you'll lose more, and you might switch decks. That's another really important thing. You have to stick to one deck that's good for the meta. If the meta shifts rapidly, you can switch to something else. For example, when like Patient Warrior emerged, some decks became worse than others. Maybe that's a good time to switch, but you really want to stick with one deck. That lets you play a lot more mechanically, lets you stay detached, and you also get better at that deck if you're not already playing it optimally. So you want to stick to one good meta deck, and you want to be very detached from the games. Like a lot of the time, you'll see a streamer or someone else, they're trying to ladder, and they'll start to get angry because they lose, or they'll get upset, and they'll switch to another deck, and they lose with that other deck, and they immediately throw that deck away and start playing another deck. And some really top streamers can get away with that because they're very good players, and they can even that out later. They can ladder off stream, and in general, they have chat to untilt them and to sort of have fun. Sometimes chat tilts them more, but basically they can stay detached because they do it a lot. But for someone like if you're playing from home and you're just playing Hearthstone, you can get really, really tilted, and you can go start switching through decks, and you can go on a bender, and you can lose a lot of games in a row. And once you do that, it takes you a long time to recover, because again, when you're playing optimally, you're rolling that dice, and you only get a net of a couple wins per every like 10 or so games, because having like a higher than 60% win rate is really hard to do, and even 60% is very good. Usually on the way to Legend for an average player is going to be like 51 to 52%, or maybe 50 and a little bit more, and you just grind out enough games to get there. So you want to really stay emotionally attached. You want to play one deck. Also, you want to like be distracted while you're playing just a little bit. You don't want to when you have Trump or Life Coach, like when they stream, or some players when they play in tournaments, they look over every single line, they rope on every single one of their turns, and they really think hard about what they're doing. And I don't think that's something the average player should do on ladder. That's a great way to play, and if you can keep that up game after game after game, really good for you. But most people are going to end up getting really burnt out doing that. They'll play a couple games and they'll get tired and they'll start making mistakes, or they'll start tilting. So for the average player, it's best to play some sort of deck where you can play it mechanically, and you want to think, you want to make good plays, right? But you don't want to go over every single line and rope every game. That's really hard to do, and while that's good to do in tournaments, and if you're the kind of player that can do that consistently through ladder, really good for you. But again, if you can't do that without getting bored or tired, you shouldn't do that, because it's better to get that volume of games in with your 60 or with your 51 win percentage than to get a couple games in a day at like 60 or 70% or whatever. That's another reason why some people argue that aggro decks are better for ladder than control decks, because the games take a shorter period of time. So, take whatever time you need to think, but don't think super hard about every game. Also, like win streaks, lose streaks. When you're winning a lot, you create sort of a positive feedback loop where you win a game that makes you happy, so you play the deck better, and then you win another game. So that's definitely something you want to perpetuate. Whereas if you lose, that creates sort of a negative feedback loop. You lose, you get mad at the deck or at yourself, and you play worse. So it's important. A lot of people will tell you this. You can read this pretty much everywhere. But if you're on a losing streak, take breaks. Basically, you want to be at the point where you always feel like you want to play Hearthstone. Like you feel like you're not playing enough, and you always want to go home and just play more Hearthstone. You never want to be at the point where you feel like it's a chore or something like that. It should be mechanical, basically. So stay detached. It should be pretty mechanical. It's just like a assembly line. You're just going through it. So basically, that's my approach to how I ladder to legend. And after that, I let myself have a little bit of fun and things like that. And the game should still be fun for you, but basically, just don't get too involved, too attached, and just be very robotic through the whole process. And that is what I think the easiest way to get to legend is. Now, it's harder to do than to say, obviously, because it's hard to stay detached, and people get very attached to their games and things like that. But that's sort of my general advice on hitting legend. And so I hope maybe that helps a little bit, or that's an approach you consider. Thank you.